My name is Stefan. I'm 26 years old, and if I had to describe myself in a few words, I'd say I'm simple, hardworking, and a little too comfortable being alone. I've never been the kind of person who craves attention. I don't go out much, I don't chase excitement, and I don't really enjoy crowded places. I prefer quiet spaces, my room, my chair, my screen glowing in the dark. That's where I feel most like myself. Gaming isn't just something I do to pass time. It's my passion. It's the one place where I feel fully alive, fully focused, and in control. I've spent years sharpening my skills, competing online, and pushing myself to improve. There were nights I stayed up till sunrise, not because I had to, but because I wanted to win, to prove something to myself. And I did. I've won a few online tournaments, not huge, life-changing ones, but enough to make me proud. Enough to remind me that even someone quiet like me can stand out somewhere. In the digital world, I'm not just Stefan, the introverted guy who barely speaks. I'm confident, sharp, and respected. But when the screen turns off, everything goes quiet again. My life, in reality, is stable, predictable, maybe even a little too predictable. Wake up, help around the house, spend hours gaming, eat, sleep, repeat. Days blend into each other so smoothly that sometimes I don't even notice time passing. Weeks feel like days, and months slip away before I realize it. It's not that I'm unhappy. It's just that nothing really changes. I live with my older brother, and honestly, we couldn't be more different. He's outgoing, social, always surrounded by friends. Our house is rarely quiet when he's around. There's always laughter, loud conversations, or someone coming and going. He enjoys life in a way I've never really understood. Sometimes I watch him from a distance, how easily he connects with people, how naturally he fits into every room he walks into. It's not jealousy, exactly, just curiosity. Like watching a different world that I was never part of. He's always tried to include me, though. Come hang out with us, he'd say. Meet some people. You'll like them. But I usually find an excuse. A match to finish. A game to play. Something to avoid stepping outside my comfort zone. And the truth is, I've stayed in that comfort zone for a long time. Especially when it comes to relationships. I've never really explored that side of life. Not seriously, at least. While others were dating, falling in love, experiencing heartbreak, I was leveling up, unlocking achievements, building a different kind of progress. It wasn't a conscious decision. It just happened. Maybe I was too focused. Maybe I was too shy. Or maybe I just never met someone who made me feel like stepping out of my world was worth it. Love, for me, always felt distant. Like something that belonged to other people's stories, not mine. And I was okay with that. At least, I thought I was. Because deep down, in those quiet moments when the room felt a little too silent, I sometimes wondered what it would feel like to have someone sit beside me, not saying much, just being there. Someone who understood the quiet. Someone who didn't need me to be different. But those thoughts never lasted long. I'd shake them off, put my headset back on, and dive into another game. Another match. Another escape. That was my life. Simple. Safe. Controlled. I didn't know it yet, but all it would take was one unexpected moment. One person walking through the door at the wrong, or maybe the right, time, to change everything I thought I knew about myself. And about what I was capable of feeling. It was just another ordinary day. The kind that starts without purpose and ends the same way. Quiet, uneventful, predictable. My brother was out, probably with friends or at work, and the house felt unusually still. For me, that kind of silence was comforting. I was in my room, sitting in front of my setup, completely immersed in a competitive match. My headset was on, my focus sharp, fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. In those moments, everything else fades away. The world, the noise, even time itself. It was just me and the game. I didn't hear the front door at first. Didn't notice the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the house. Not until I felt it. That strange awareness. Like someone else was there. At first, I ignored it. I thought maybe I was imagining things, too deep into the match to care. But then, from the corner of my eye, I caught movement near the doorway. I froze for just a second. Then I turned my head. And that's when I saw him. Troy. My brother's friend. He was standing casually by the door, like he had every right to be there. Like he belonged in that space without needing permission. He looked exactly how I remembered, but somehow different too. Taller than most people, with a broad, confident posture that made him stand out instantly. His presence wasn't loud, but it was strong, something you noticed without trying. There was a certain ease in the way he carried himself, like the world had always made space for him. He had that natural charm, the kind that didn't feel forced. The kind people are just drawn to. And I knew the type he was. The kind who always had attention. Always surrounded by people. Especially girls. I'd heard enough stories from my brother to know that Troy didn't struggle in that department. He lived freely, without overthinking, without holding back. Completely opposite of me. "Hey," he said, his voice calm, almost amused. "Didn't mean to scare you." I quickly took off my headset, trying to process the sudden shift from my quiet world to this unexpected reality. "I didn't hear you come in," I replied, my voice a little awkward, a little unsure. He stepped further into the room, glancing at my setup, the screen still glowing with the paused game. "Yeah, I figured," he said with a slight smile. "You looked pretty focused." There was something about the way he said it. Not teasing, not mocking. Just observant. Still, I felt a bit self-conscious. I wasn't used to having people in my space. Especially not someone like him. My brother's not home," I said, almost instinctively. "I know," Troy replied, leaning slightly against the doorframe. "He told me to wait. Said he'd be back soon." That should have been normal. Simple. But for some reason, it didn't feel that way. He didn't leave. Didn't step out or go sit somewhere else. He stayed there, relaxed, like he had all the time in the world. And suddenly, the room that once felt comfortable started to feel different. Smaller, somehow. I turned back to my screen, trying to refocus on the game. But it wasn't the same. My movements slowed, my attention split. I could feel his presence behind me, even without looking. And the strangest part? I was aware of it in a way I couldn't explain. Usually, I don't notice people like that. I don't pay attention to how someone stands, how they move, or how their presence changes the atmosphere around me. But with Troy, it was impossible to ignore. Every small shift, every quiet movement, every second he stayed in that room. "Do you always play this much?" he asked after a moment. I hesitated before answering. "Yeah, I guess." "You're good." "I try to be." He let out a soft chuckle. That doesn't sound very confident for someone who looks like they know what they're doing. I shrugged slightly, not sure how to respond. Confidence wasn't something I expressed easily, at least, not outside the screen. There was a brief silence. Not uncomfortable, but not completely comfortable either. Just something in between. I finally glanced back at him, and for a moment, our eyes met. And that moment lasted a little longer than it should have. There was no clear reason for it. No obvious meaning. But something about it felt different. Like a pause in time that neither of us rushed to break. I quickly looked away, my focus returning to the screen, even though I wasn't really playing anymore. It was strange. We were completely different people. Different lives, different energy, different worlds. He belonged to a side of life I had never stepped into, and never really planned to. And yet, sitting there, in that quiet room, with him just a few steps away, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted. Something small, almost unnoticeable, but real. At the time, I didn't understand it. Didn't question it. I just knew one thing. For the first time in a long while, my quiet, predictable world didn't feel so quiet anymore. After a while, I couldn't focus on the game anymore. My character stood idle on the screen, the match long forgotten, but I didn't even bother exiting. My mind wasn't there. It was somewhere else, split between awareness and confusion, between the quiet comfort I was used to and the unfamiliar presence behind me. I'm just gonna freshen up, I said, standing up from my chair. Troy nodded casually. Yeah, sure. Simple. Normal. At least, it should have been. I grabbed a towel and headed toward the bathroom, trying to shake off the strange tension that had settled in my chest. Maybe I just needed a moment alone. A reset. Something to bring me back to myself. The house was still quiet. The same silence as before, but now it felt different. I stepped inside, closing the door behind me, not fully locking it, just out of habit. I didn't think much of it. After all, I thought I was alone. Or at least, alone enough. I changed quickly, slipping into a pair of tight shorts, something comfortable. Something I didn't have to think about. My mind was still distracted, replaying small moments from earlier. His voice, his presence, the way he stood in the doorway. I turned on the shower. Water began to run, filling the space with a soft, steady sound. It should have been calming, familiar. But even then, something inside me felt unsettled. I stepped under the water, letting it fall over me, trying to clear my thoughts. For a moment, it worked. Everything slowed down. The noise in my head faded, replaced by the simple rhythm of water and breath. I closed my eyes. And then, something shifted. I don't know what it was exactly. Maybe a sound. Maybe just instinct. But suddenly, I felt it again. That awareness. Like I wasn't alone. My eyes opened instantly. And that's when I saw him. Troy. Standing just outside the bathroom area, near the slightly open door. For a second, my brain couldn't even process it. Everything froze. The water kept running. The air felt heavier, and time just stopped. Our eyes met. And neither of us moved. There was no immediate reaction. No panic, no apology, no sudden turning away. Just silence. Thick, heavy silence that stretched longer than it should have. I felt my heart start to race. A wave of embarrassment hit me first, sharp and sudden. I wasn't expecting anyone to see me like this. Unprepared, exposed in a way I never allowed myself to be around others. But that wasn't the only feeling. There was something else. Something unfamiliar. Something I couldn't name at the time. I should have said something. Told him to leave. Closed the door. Done anything to break the moment. But I didn't. And strangely, neither did he. Troy didn't laugh. Didn't smirk. Didn't act like it was some awkward joke he had accidentally walked into. He just stood there, looking. Not in a way that felt mocking or careless, but something quieter. Something more focused. Like he was seeing me, really seeing me, for the first time. And that made it worse. Or maybe, not worse. Just different. I became hyper-aware of everything. The sound of the water, the space between us, the way my breath had changed without me realizing it. I could feel the moment stretching, pulling us into something neither of us understood. Finally, I stepped back slightly, instinctively reaching for my towel. That small movement seemed to break whatever had been holding us in place. Troy blinked, like he had just snapped out of something. Sorry, he said quickly, his voice lower now, less casual than before. I didn't. I thought no one was in here. His words sounded normal. But the tone wasn't. There was something behind it. Something unspoken. It's fine, I replied, though my voice didn't sound as steady as I wanted it to. For a moment, he didn't leave. And that pause, just a second too long, said more than anything else. Then, finally, he stepped back, turning away and closing the door properly this time. I stood there, frozen under the running water. My heart was still racing. But now it wasn't just from embarrassment. I didn't understand what had just happened. It should have been simple. An accident, an awkward moment to forget. Something to laugh about later or ignore completely. But it didn't feel like that. It felt important. Like something had shifted in a way I couldn't explain. I turned off the water slowly, my mind replaying the moment over and over again. The eye contact. The silence. The way neither of us rushed to escape it. And the way he had looked at me. Not like a joke. Not like a mistake. But like something that had caught him off guard. In the same way it had caught me. I wrapped the towel around myself, standing there for a second longer, trying to steady my thoughts. But there was no clear answer. No simple explanation. Just a quiet, growing awareness that something had changed between us. Something subtle, but undeniable. And the strangest part? A small part of me didn't want to forget it, even if I didn't understand why. When I stepped out of the bathroom, everything looked the same. The hallway, the quiet house, the faint hum of my computer still running in my room. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything felt different. I paused for a second, adjusting the towel in my hands, trying to steady my breathing before walking back. I told myself it was just an awkward moment. An accident. Something that would fade if I didn't think about it too much. But the moment I stepped into my room again, I knew it hadn't faded. Troy was sitting on the edge of my bed. Not standing casually like before. Not leaning against the doorframe. He was sitting, still, quiet, his elbows resting on his knees as if he had been lost in thought. He looked up when I entered. For a brief second, our eyes met again. And just like before, that same silence returned. I quickly looked away, pretending to focus on anything else. My desk, the screen, the headset lying where I left it. You can sit there, I said, realizing how pointless that sounded since he was already sitting. Yeah, he replied softly. That was it. No jokes. No teasing. No casual confidence like earlier. Just quiet. I changed quickly into a loose shirt and avoided looking directly at him for too long. But even without looking, I could feel it. His presence. It was different now. Not heavy, but focused. Like his attention was always somewhere near me. I sat back down in my chair, trying to return to my game, but it felt impossible. My hands moved, but my mind wasn't there. Every small movement in the room pulled my attention back to him. And the strangest part? He wasn't talking much anymore. Troy, the guy who was always easygoing, always confident, always ready with something to say, was unusually quiet. Not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. Like something was on his mind. Do you play every day? He asked after a while. His voice broke the silence, but it wasn't loud. It felt careful somehow. Yeah, mostly, I replied, keeping my eyes on the screen. You must really like it. I do. Another pause. Then I heard him shift slightly on the bed. You're good at it. I glanced back at him for a moment. I guess. He gave a small nod, but his eyes didn't leave me immediately this time. It wasn't intense, but it lingered. And that lingering made my chest feel tight in a way I didn't understand. I turned back again, trying to focus, but it was useless. Every second felt stretched. Every small interaction felt noticeable. At some point, I reached for my water bottle on the desk at the same time he leaned forward slightly, as if he was about to say something. Our hands brushed. It was nothing. Just a small, accidental touch. But it didn't feel like nothing. I pulled my hand back a little too quickly. Sorry, I said automatically. It's fine, he replied, just as quickly. But neither of us moved right away. That tiny moment, barely a second, lingered longer in my mind than it should have. I could feel my heartbeat again. Not fast, just present. Aware. Why did that feel different? Why was I noticing things like this? I'd never paid attention to small touches before. Never thought twice about someone sitting close or reaching for the same thing. But now, everything felt amplified. I leaned back in my chair, trying to act normal, trying to ignore the growing tension I couldn't explain. From the corner of my eye, I noticed he had shifted closer, just slightly. Not enough to seem intentional, but enough for me to notice. And I did notice. More than I wanted to. I became aware of everything about him. The way he sat, the way his hands rested loosely, the way his gaze occasionally drifted back to me when he thought I wasn't looking. And when I did look, he didn't always look away immediately. That was new. That was confusing. This was Troy. The same guy I had always known as my brother's confident, carefree friend. The one who never stayed in one place too long. The one who was always chasing something, or someone, new. But right now, he didn't seem distracted by anything else. Just here. Just present. And somehow, it felt like that presence was centered around me. The thought made me uneasy. Not in a bad way, just unfamiliar. I had never questioned myself like this before. Never paused to think about how someone's presence affected me. But now, I couldn't stop thinking. About the bathroom. About that moment. About the way he had looked at me. And about the way things felt now. Different. I swallowed slightly, trying to push the thoughts away, but they didn't leave. Instead, they grew quieter, deeper, more persistent. For the first time in my life, I found myself asking questions I had never asked before. About him. About myself. About what any of this meant. And as I sat there, pretending to focus on a game I wasn't really playing, I realized something I couldn't ignore anymore. Troy wasn't acting like himself. Not the version of him I thought I knew. He was quieter, more attentive, more present. And whether I wanted to admit it or not, it felt like his attention wasn't just random. It felt like it was focused on me. That realization should have made things clearer. But instead, it only made everything more confusing. That night felt different from the start. My brother still wasn't home. Hours had passed, and the house had settled into a deeper kind of silence. The kind that only comes late at night, when everything slows down and even time seems to move more quietly. I had stopped playing a long time ago. The screen was still on, casting a faint glow across the room. But neither of us was paying attention to it anymore. Troy was still there. And somehow, neither of us had found a reason to leave. We weren't doing anything in particular. Just existing in the same space. But it didn't feel empty. It felt full. I was sitting on my chair, leaning back slightly, while Troy had shifted from the edge of the bed to sitting more comfortably, his back resting against the wall. At some point, without really noticing how it happened, the distance between us had closed. Not completely, but enough. "You don't talk much, do you?" he said quietly, breaking the silence. I let out a small breath, almost a half smile. "Not really." He nodded, like he already knew that. I noticed. There was no judgment in his voice. Just observation. "What about you?" I asked, glancing at him. "You're usually different." He let out a soft chuckle, but it didn't carry the same energy I expected from him. "Yeah, I guess I am." For a moment, he looked down, his hands loosely clasped together. "I don't always feel like talking," he added. That caught me off guard. It wasn't what I expected from someone like him. "Really?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked back at me, his expression calm but more open than before. "Yeah, I just don't usually have anyone to talk to like this." "Like this?" I repeated. "Like, actually talking," he said, searching for the right words. "Not just joking around or passing time. I mean something real." The room went quiet again, but this time it felt softer. Less tense. More honest. I shifted slightly in my chair, turning more toward him. "I get that." He raised an eyebrow slightly, like he was surprised. "I don't really talk to people much either," I continued. "Not about anything real." "Why not?" I shrugged lightly. Never had a reason to. Or maybe, never met the right person. The words came out more easily than I expected. Maybe it was the silence. Maybe it was the way he was listening. Or maybe it was just the fact that, for once, I didn't feel like I had to hold everything in. Troy leaned his head back slightly against the wall, exhaling slowly. "I've been around a lot of people," he said after a pause. "More than I can count." I nodded. That part didn't surprise me. "But none of it ever felt real," he added. "That part did." I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, like he wasn't used to explaining this. It's like, you can be surrounded by people and still feel completely alone, he said quietly. Like no one actually sees you. They just see what they expect. I didn't say anything right away, because I understood that. More than I wanted to admit. I think I've felt that my whole life, I said after a moment. Our eyes met again. But this time, it wasn't tense. It was understanding. A quiet kind of connection that didn't need explanation. I didn't think you would, he said softly. Why? He gave a small shrug. You seem comfortable. Like you've got your own world. I do, I admitted. But that doesn't mean it doesn't get lonely sometimes. The honesty in my own voice surprised me. I don't usually say things like that. Not out loud. Troy didn't respond immediately. He just looked at me. Really looked at me. And for once, I didn't look away. There was something different about the silence now. It wasn't empty. It wasn't awkward. It felt shared. At some point, I stood up from my chair without thinking too much about it and moved closer, sitting on the edge of the bed instead. Not too close, but closer than before. Troy didn't move away. He shifted slightly, making space without making it obvious. Our shoulders were almost aligned now, just a small distance between them. Neither of us mentioned it. Neither of us needed to. You ever think about changing things? He asked after a while. Like what? Your life. Your routine. Everything. I thought about it. Sometimes, I said, but I don't know where I'd even start. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I get that. Another pause. But this one felt warmer. Safer. Our arms brushed lightly when he adjusted his position. And this time, neither of us pulled away. The contact was brief. Natural. But it stayed with me. There was hesitation in the air. Uncertainty. But also something else. Comfort. A quiet, growing comfort that made everything feel a little less complicated, even if nothing had actually been explained. We sat there for a long time after that, talking about small things, big things, things that didn't matter, and things that did. And somewhere in between those conversations, between the pauses, the glances, the shared silence, I realized something. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel alone. That night, something shifted again. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. But it was there, quietly building, growing in the spaces between words, in the pauses that lasted a little longer than usual. My brother still hadn't come home. At this point, it almost felt normal. Like the house had slowly become our space for the night. The world outside didn't matter. Time didn't matter. It was just me and Troy. We had been talking for hours, about random things, about life, about nothing and everything at the same time. The kind of conversation that doesn't feel forced. The kind that just flows. Eventually, the energy shifted into something quieter. The room dimmed, lit only by a soft glow from the screen. The air felt still, calm, but underneath it, something unspoken lingered. I moved from the chair again, sitting beside him on the bed. This time, closer than before. Close enough that our shoulders brushed lightly. Neither of us commented on it. Neither of us moved away. We just stayed there. For a moment, we didn't speak. The silence returned, but it wasn't awkward. It felt full. I could feel his presence beside me more clearly now. The warmth, the subtle movement when he shifted slightly, the quiet rhythm of his breathing. Every small detail felt amplified. You ever think about moments like this? He asked suddenly, his voice low. Like what? I replied, turning my head slightly toward him. He didn't answer immediately. Like, when something changes, and you don't know what it means yet, he said after a pause. I felt my chest tighten slightly. Yeah, I admitted quietly. Another silence. But this one felt heavier. Not uncomfortable, just real. Our shoulders pressed a little more firmly together as he adjusted his position, and this time, neither of us tried to create space. Instead, we stayed like that. Closer. I became aware of my hand resting beside me on the bed, just inches from his. Such a small distance. But it felt like something more. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was accidental. Maybe it wasn't. But our fingers brushed. Lightly. For a second, I thought I imagined it. But then it happened again. More deliberate this time. And neither of us pulled away. My heart started to beat faster, not from fear, but from something I couldn't fully understand. Something new. Troy hesitated. I could feel it in the slight tension in his movement, in the way his hand stayed there, close to mine but not fully touching. Like he was waiting, deciding. Then, slowly, he moved his hand. And gently, carefully, he held mine. Not tightly, not suddenly, just enough for me to feel it. Warm, steady, real. I froze for a moment, not because I wanted to pull away, but because I didn't know how to react. This had never happened before. Not like this. Not with anyone. But I didn't move. I didn't pull my hand back. Instead, I let it stay there. And after a second, my fingers responded naturally, settling into his. The silence deepened. But it didn't feel empty. It felt like something had been said without words. I turned my head slightly, looking at him. He was already looking at me. There was hesitation in his eyes. Uncertainty. But also something else. Something honest. Something real. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Because in that moment, everything felt clear in a way words couldn't explain. My breath felt slower. The world around us faded even more. And the only thing that mattered was that small connection between us. His hand holding mine. His presence beside me. And the way everything felt. Different. He shifted slightly closer. Just enough that I could feel the change. Just enough that the space between us disappeared completely. For a second, I wondered if this was too much. If we were crossing something we couldn't come back from. But I didn't stop it. I didn't want to. Troy hesitated again. I could see it. Feel it. Like he was giving me time to pull away if I wanted to. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. And that was enough. Slowly, carefully, he leaned in. Not rushed. Not forced. Just uncertain, but intentional. I felt my heart racing again. But this time I didn't try to calm it. I let it happen. I let myself feel it. And when his lips finally met mine, it was soft, gentle, almost hesitant. Like neither of us fully believed it was real. For a moment, everything else disappeared. There was no noise, no thoughts, just that single, quiet connection. It wasn't intense. It wasn't overwhelming. It was simple, but meaningful in a way I couldn't describe. He pulled back slightly, just enough to look at me again, as if asking a silent question. And I didn't answer with words. I didn't need to. I stayed there, close, present, and that was enough. We didn't rush anything after that. Didn't try to define it. Didn't try to understand it all at once. We just sat there, side by side, still close, still connected. Letting the moment exist for what it was. Something new. Something uncertain. But something real. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I needed to overthink it. I just felt it. The next morning didn't feel the way I expected. There was no warmth from the night before. No easy continuation of what had happened. Instead, everything felt heavier, complicated. I woke up slowly, the memory of the night still fresh in my mind. For a brief moment, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying it all. The conversation, the silence, the way our hands had found each other, and that quiet, uncertain kiss. It had felt so real, so natural. But now, I didn't know what to do with it. I sat up, running a hand through my hair, trying to steady my thoughts. The room looked the same, but something inside me had changed, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. What did that moment mean? Was it just something temporary? Something that happened because of the situation, the silence, the closeness? Or was it something more? And then the thought hit me harder than anything else. My brother. This wasn't just anyone. This was his friend. The realization made my chest tighten. What would he think if he knew? How would he react? Would he feel betrayed? Angry? Disappointed? I had never been in a situation like this before. Never had to think about consequences like these. And suddenly, it felt like everything was tangled together in a way I couldn't separate. Feelings. Fear. Guilt. I stood up and stepped out of the room, needing space, needing air. That's when I saw Troy. He was in the living room, standing near the window, his back partially turned. He looked like he hadn't slept much either. For a moment, I just stood there, unsure of what to say. "Hey," I said quietly. He turned, and for a second, our eyes met. But this time, it wasn't the same. There was hesitation. Distance. "Hey," he replied, his voice calm but quieter than usual. A silence followed. Not the comfortable kind from last night. This one felt uncertain. I shifted slightly, unsure whether to move closer or stay where I was. "So, about last night," I started, but the words felt heavy as soon as they left my mouth. Troy looked away briefly, running a hand across the back of his neck. "Yeah," he said, almost under his breath. Another pause. "I don't know what that was," I admitted honestly. He nodded slowly. "Me neither." That answer should have made things easier. But it didn't. Because it meant we were both lost in the same confusion. "I mean, I've never—" I stopped, not even sure how to finish the sentence. "I know," he said quietly, cutting in before I had to. I looked at him again. He seemed different. Not just quieter, but conflicted. Like something inside him was shifting in a way he didn't fully understand. "This isn't me," he said after a moment, his voice low. "At least, it never was before." I understood what he meant. His life, his past, it didn't align with what had happened between us. He had always been certain of who he was. Or at least, that's what it seemed like. "And now?" I asked softly. He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. "I don't know," he admitted. That uncertainty hung between us. Heavy. Real. We were both standing in unfamiliar territory, trying to make sense of something that didn't fit into the lives we had known before. And then there was the fear. Not just of what this meant for us, but of how the world around us would see it. People talk. People judge. And this wasn't something we could easily explain. "I don't want to mess things up," I said quietly. "Neither do I," he replied. But neither of us knew what messing things up even meant anymore. There were too many layers. Too many questions without answers. And because of that, distance started to form. Not suddenly. Not intentionally. But naturally. He stepped back slightly. I didn't move forward. The space between us grew, not just physically, but emotionally. Like we were both trying to protect ourselves from something we didn't fully understand yet. "I should probably go," Troy said after a while. The words felt heavier than they should have. "Yeah, maybe," I replied, even though a part of me didn't want him to leave. He nodded once, briefly, then turned toward the door. For a moment, I thought he might say something else. But he didn't. And neither did I. The door closed behind him quietly. And just like that, the house felt empty again. But this time, the silence wasn't comforting. It felt loud. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't sure what came next. The days after that felt longer than they should have. Not because anything major happened, but because nothing did. Troy didn't come over. My brother didn't mention him. And I didn't ask. I went back to my routine. My games, my quiet room, the same predictable rhythm. But it didn't feel the same anymore. The comfort I used to find in it now felt incomplete. Like something was missing. Or maybe, someone. I tried to ignore it at first. Told myself it was better this way. Simpler. Safer. But the truth was, I couldn't stop thinking about him. About that night. About everything that followed. And the questions didn't go away either. They just grew quieter. Deeper. Until one evening, everything changed again. I was sitting in my room, staring at my screen without really seeing it. when I heard a knock on the door. Not loud. Not rushed. Just steady. My heart skipped slightly, though I didn't know why. I stood up and walked toward it, opening it slowly. And there he was. Troy. For a moment, neither of us spoke. It felt just like before, those quiet seconds where everything else fades, and it's just the two of us, standing there, unsure but aware. "Hey," he said. "Hey," I replied. His expression was different this time. Still calm, but more certain. "Can we talk?" he asked. I nodded without hesitation and stepped aside, letting him in. The room felt smaller again, but not in the same tense way as before. This time, it felt focused. He didn't sit right away. Just stood there for a moment, like he was gathering his thoughts. "I've been thinking," he started. I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "A lot." He let out a small breath, then looked at me, really looked at me, without hesitation this time. "I don't understand everything that happened," he said honestly. "And I don't have all the answers." I nodded slightly. "Yeah, same. But one thing I do know," he continued, his voice steady now, "is that what I felt, it wasn't nothing." The words landed softly, but they carried weight. "I've never felt like that before," he admitted. "Not with anyone." There was no confusion in his voice this time. Just honesty. Just truth. "And that scared me," he added quietly. "Still does, a little." I understood that. More than I wanted to admit. "But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen," he said. "Or act like it didn't mean something. Because it did." The silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was open. Waiting. I took a small step closer, not even realizing I was doing it. "It meant something to me too," I said. My voice was softer than usual, but steady. "I didn't expect it," I continued. "I didn't even know I could feel something like that." Troy's expression shifted slightly, not surprise, but something warmer. Understanding. Relief. "I thought maybe it was just me," he said quietly. "It's not," I replied. We stood there, closer now, the space between us no longer filled with uncertainty, but with something calmer. Something real. "I don't know what this makes me," he admitted after a moment. "Or what it means for anything else in my life." "You don't have to figure it all out right now," I said. He looked at me, like he hadn't expected that answer. "We don't," I added. "We can just take it one step at a time." That seemed to settle something in him. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'd like that." Another quiet moment passed. But this one felt different from all the others before. There was no tension. No fear taking over the space. Just acceptance. Not of everything, but of this. Of what we felt. Of what we didn't fully understand yet. "I don't want to lose this," he said softly. "You won't," I replied. And for the first time since all of this began, I believed it. We didn't rush anything after that. Didn't try to define it with labels or expectations. We just stood there for a while longer, closer than before, but not overwhelmed by it. Comfortable. Certain in a quiet way. We had chosen honesty. Not because it was easy, but because it felt right. And sometimes, that's enough. For now. Life didn't change overnight. There was no sudden transformation. No dramatic shift where everything became perfect all at once. But slowly, quietly, things began to feel different. Better. I went back to my routine, my games, my long hours in front of the screen. The same space I had always called my comfort zone. But now, it didn't feel like an escape anymore. It felt like a part of me, not the whole of me. I still played competitively. Still pushed myself. Still chased wins. But somewhere along the way, I stopped using it to fill the silence. Because the silence wasn't the same anymore. It didn't feel empty. Troy became a part of my life in a way I hadn't expected. Not loudly. Not in a way that demanded attention. Just naturally. He started coming over more often, but not for my brother. Sometimes they'd hang out, sure, but there were moments when it was just us. Sitting in my room, talking, or even doing nothing at all. And somehow, that nothing felt like everything. He had changed too. Not completely, but enough for me to notice. The restless energy he used to carry, the constant need to move, to chase something, it had softened. He was calmer now, more present, more real. He still smiled the same way, still had that natural confidence. But there was something deeper behind it now. Something grounded, something honest. And I think, in some way, we both helped each other find that. We didn't rush what we had. Didn't try to force it into something it wasn't ready to be. We took our time, learning, understanding, growing into something neither of us had planned, but both of us chose. There were still questions, still moments of doubt, still things we didn't fully understand about ourselves or each other. But we didn't let that stop us anymore. Because what we had wasn't perfect. It wasn't simple, but it was real. And that mattered more than anything. There were quiet evenings where we'd sit side by side, not saying much, just existing in the same space. Sometimes our hands would find each other without thought. Sometimes it was just a glance, a small smile. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, but always meaningful. I started noticing the small things more, the way he listened when I spoke, the way he stayed even when there was nothing happening, the way he made the space around me feel lighter, safer. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing outside of something. I felt like I was part of it, part of something real, something that didn't need to be explained to anyone else to matter. My life was still simple, still quiet in many ways, but it wasn't empty anymore. It had depth now. It had connection. And maybe that's what I had been missing all along. Not noise, not excitement, just someone who understood the quiet. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know how everything will turn out. But for once, I'm not afraid of that. Because whatever happens next, we'll face it honestly, together. And sometimes, a new beginning doesn't come with big changes or loud moments. Sometimes, it starts quietly, with a feeling you never expected, and a person you never saw coming. And somehow, that's enough. Hey everyone, it's Stefan again. If you've stayed with me through this story, I just want to say, love can come when you least expect it. It doesn't always look the way you imagine, and it doesn't always follow the rules you think exist. Sometimes, it's quiet, unexpected, and completely out of your comfort zone. What I've learned, and what I hope you can take away, is this: love teaches us more than just romance. It teaches us to accept ourselves, even the parts we've hidden away. It teaches us to respect others, even when they're different from what we thought we knew. And it teaches us not to judge too quickly, because connection can come in ways that surprise you. True connection isn't about labels or fitting into a box. It's about understanding someone, seeing them, and allowing yourself to be seen in return. It's about honesty, patience, and the courage to be vulnerable. So, if this story spoke to you, or if it made you think, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you listening or watching from? What did you feel as you followed this journey? Drop a comment, share your thoughts, and if you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. Stories like these mean a lot, and your support helps me keep sharing them. Remember, life can surprise you, and so can love. The most important thing is to stay open, stay honest, and embrace the unexpected. Sometimes, that's exactly what makes a story, and a life, worth living. Stay curious, stay kind, and thank you for being part of this one with me. Tell me in the comments, which city are you watching or listening from? If this story touched you, or made you feel something, don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Every like and share helps more people discover stories like this. And if you want to see more emotional, meaningful stories, stories that explore love, connection, and the unexpected, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything to me. Every comment, every like, every share. It encourages me to keep telling these stories that matter. So, let me know your thoughts, your city, and your feelings. I can't wait to read them and share more journeys with all of you. Thank you for being part of this one. Red Heart Hash.